Of the 92 people aboard, many of them were singers.
Okay, so welcome Facebook, Twitter, Periscope, and YouTube followers. Thanks for joining us for Martial Arts World Radio this evening. Our guests are going to be Frank Shamrock and Michael DePasquale Jr. So we're just going to get some news and weather out of the way, and then we'll get the show kicked off. Thank you once again for joining us.
The law firm member was Jeff Tabor, who died along with his wife and their 2 sons. Police say more than 40 people have been shot in Chicago since Friday afternoon alone, and more than 36 guns have been seized. Paul McCartney says George Michael's sweet soul music will live on after his death. Michael died yesterday at the age of 53 of heart failure. From the Canadian Press, I'm Roger Ward.
Here's Mark and Don Leslie from Leslie Motors in Harriston, Walkerton, and Wingham.
Ho, ho, ho! Hello, Marky. Have you been a good little boy this year?
Don, I know it's you. Why are you acting like Santa?
Because I feel like Santa with all the deals going on at Leslie Motors.
Yeah, you're right. It does kind of feel like we're handing out presents this month.
New or used, trucks, SUVs, CUVs, or cars, there's deals everywhere.
Just in time for Christmas. Ho, ho, ho!
I know. I feel it too.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
The weather is presented by Grey Bruce Brick and Landscape Supply. Check out their popular Canrock line of retaining walls and many styles of interlocking stone. Visit their showroom at 525 First Street in Hanover or online at greybrucebrick.ca.
Tonight, cloudy with a 60% chance of flurries. It'll be windy with a low of -2. For Tuesday, cloudy with a 70% chance of flurries. It'll be windy again and a high of 0. And looking ahead to Wednesday, cloudy with a 30% chance of flurries and a high of 0.
Here's what's happening at the Hanover Legion in the month of December. On Mondays at 1:30, there's a euchre. On Tuesdays at 7:30, it starts. And on Thursday, you can play solo at 7 p.m. Fridays, there's a big euchre at 1 p.m. On December the 25th, to celebrate Christmas, the Legion will be closed. And finally, on December the 31st, there is a New Year's Eve dance with music by the Revised Way. This starts at 8 p.m. Tickets are only $20 in advance, $25 at the door.
Okay.
There is a light lunch provided.
All right.
And for further information, you can call the Legion at 519-364-1130.
The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and not necessarily those of Blue Water Radio.
Martial Arts World Radio is brought to you by Bruce County Combat and Fitness in Walkerton. Check out the full list of classes at brucecountycombat.com.
Welcome to Martial Arts World Radio. I'm your host, Joseph Clark. Today's guests are UFC World Champion Frank Shamrock and Jiu-Jitsu Grandmaster, publisher of Karate International magazine, and cinema performer Michael DePasquale Jr. Be sure to check out our website at www.mawradio.com for the advertisement for the ultimate destination for martial arts and MMA Expo, which is taking place from January 27th to 29th at the Tropicana Casino Hotel in Atlantic City. And this event is not to be missed. So I encourage you to check it out on Google at the ultimate destination for martial arts and MMA Expo. This week's inspirational quote is from Sitting Bull and goes as follows. The warrior, for us, is one who sacrifices himself for the good of others. His task is to take care of the elderly, the defenseless, those who cannot provide for themselves, and above all, the children, the future of humanity. Sitting Bull, 1831 to 1890.
Hi, this is Olympic bronze medalist in judo, Marty Malloy, and you're listening to Martial Arts World Radio.
Frank Shamrock was the first fighter to hold the UFC world title for middleweight champion, now known as light heavyweight. He retired as a 4-time undefeated champion. He was ranked as the pound-for-pound #1 UFC fighter in the world during his reign as champion. He was named Fighter of the Decade for the 1990s by the Wrestling Observer magazine. Best Full Contact Fighter by Black Belt magazine, 1989. And 3 times Fighter of the Year by Full Contact Fighter magazine. He is a 7th degree black belt in submission fighting awarded by Sensei Philip S. Porter of the United States Martial Arts Association. He is the adopted brother of UFC Hall of Famer Ken Shamrock. Frank is an author, entrepreneur, philanthropist, and social activist. He was a color commentator for Showtime Networks and was a brand spokesman for Strikeforce. Last week, Frank and I chatted about Bruce Lee and the evolution of the UFC, Bellator, and other fight promotions.
Frank, welcome to Martial Arts World Radio, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Frank, in your expert opinion, how has martial arts evolved since the life and times of Bruce Lee?
Wow. I mean, I think it's come full circle to what...
Okay, I'm going to check those levels for me, and when you come back, just give me a thumbs up or thumbs down on how high they are.
And combat.
Thank you, sir.
No rule of style to go or whatever style. Yeah, I think we've come full circle. He was studying it, but there was never the, a forum to apply it or the opportunity to take it out and, apply the technique. But yeah, I think you'd be right here with us. I was, really up like we all are, but enjoying the journey.
Frank, did Bruce Lee start a movement, or was the movement already started and he accelerated it?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think he started a movement. And I say that because, America had no martial arts, and we still only have one martial art that we've actually created, and that is mixed martial arts. But there was no real culture or new ideas here. Maybe they did modify what the time now and be fight. But he was the first, I think, visionary to take this larger idea, which is that we shouldn't be confined to certain ideas and things. We should be able to maximize our bodies, our mind, our spirit, and utilize all of that into our martial prowess.
In your opinion, did Bruce Lee emphasize a philosophical aspect to the movement?
Absolutely, and I think he was a forefront leader in that. Just before that era was very much, follow directions down the line, punch hard, do the thing. And he certainly opened up, my mind and eyes to, tell you about what the fight is and what your body can do. Fighting is quite simple at its core. But what you do with it and how you develop both mind, body, and spirit, that's the real thing. And I think he was, a forefront leader in just speaking what it was. But that's become the life of a lot of people now.
Frank, what was your first personal exposure to Bruce Lee?
My first personal exposure to Bruce Lee was watching him on television and just seeing, an extraordinary representative of martial arts. It was unlike anything I'd seen before. And, my brother and I used to rip out Bruce Lee posts and beat the heck out of each other because, that's what he was doing. And he was doing it in ways that we hadn't seen before and, standing for things that, were in touch with the human spirit I felt. And, yeah, I instantly fell in love.
Frank, is Bruce Lee's philosophies and influence felt as strongly today, or has the movement now taken on a life of its own and progressed beyond Bruce Lee?
I think he'll always be, a founding father of martial arts, especially in our country. But I think, his ideas stand the test of time more than I think he's I think that his, vision and his belief and then what he stood for. I think years from now, people will be doing those same things, not sure why they're doing them, but they'll be because, Bruce Lee laid the foundation.
So, Frank, yourself as a pioneer in the octagon, did you think at the time that you were going to be part of something that would prove to be a movement, or did you think it was a flash in the pan thing? What were your thoughts at that time compared to where the UFC is today?
Well, I first of all thought it was completely crazy. And, but yeah, I fell in love with the entire journey and the study. The personal development that I achieved from it. I'm satisfied with where the sport is. I always thought this would become the biggest, the most successful, and most entertaining sport in the world. Because when you put two men and women against each other under this set of rules, to really test the human spirit and what can achieve and accomplish, and what the body can take, what your mind can take. And, that's the form of entertainment that everybody wants. And so I've always believed in martial arts, always believed that we would be in this position. And, I'm proud of this sport, proud of the way it's grown up, and I'm proud of where we are now, and I'm proud to call, this the American sport. It was created here.
Can you pick it up at all?
For no other reason, and we thought it would be cool to try all the martial arts, keep it together, and have some fun. That's kind of the American way. And, I think the sport is tremendous at affecting globally. Everyone's doing martial arts and how to train and what self-defense is. And I think it's also challenging, communities and countries on the Pacific. And, how to build up their mind, body, and spirit. And I think that's what Bruce Lee was really trying to do, was to get us to look inside on this journey while we develop our outside and get them to match.
So, Frank, the next question is very unfair and completely speculative. Do you think that the UFC and Bellator and professional MMA is what Bruce Lee had in mind, where he saw it evolving to? And what do you think he would have thought of all of this?
I think he would be very fulfilled with the technical journey and the development of the physical journey. The other stuff, the spirit, the personal representation by the athlete, I think, a lot of that might be hard to swallow for him in this modern era, as it is for me. The sport changed decades ago, and it became fun and good to be a bad guy and to say, mean things and bad things. And I'm not proud of that point, but we are sports entertainment. And I'm not sure Bruce Lee would be that proud of that part. But, sports evolve, societies evolve, and, I hope that he would be proud of the technical side. But I'm really proud of where we are technically. When I entered this sport, it was a bunch of strong guys, clubbing on each other and throwing things around. But it wasn't a refined, focused sport that really maximized your body's ability to fight and defend yourself. And that's where we are. And that's what Bruce wanted to do.
Yeah, and Frank, I can tell you it's my privilege week in and week out that I'm interviewing martial artists and MMA fighters from the UFC and Bellator, and the fight IQ is ever developing, and the technical aspects of the sport and the development and progression is at an all-time high and only getting higher.
Absolutely. It's 100% true. Ever evolving, finding the least resistance, finding the better path. This sport has had almost 20 years of development now. If you watch, like you said, if you watch where it came from, what's happening now, there's no, holes in the chain, there's no, weaknesses in the style. Everybody has a complete mixed martial arts game. And they're competing against each other with individual games. They're same sport. I think it's even bigger than what Bruce Lee hoped for in that, it's a real sport, as well as it's real context in martial arts.
Frank Shamrock, thanks for speaking with me today. And before we finish our interview, I know that you're available for keynotes and appearances and lectures. For any of our audience who are interested in getting in contact with you to book you, where would you like to direct them to look online?
Well, the best place to go is my website, frankshamrock.com, or you can get me up on my Facebook page, Shamrock. And yeah, when you show up, if you get some heads on for something, definitely get me up. I'd love to.
www.frankshamrock.com. Frank, thank you so much for your time. It's a real pleasure, and we look forward to speaking with you again here on Martial Arts World Radio real soon.
My pleasure, Jeff. Thank you.
This has been an interview with UFC great Frank Shamrock.
This is Olympic Taekwondo silver medalist Mia Abdallah. You are listening to Martial Arts World Radio with Joseph Clark.
Bruce County Combat and Fitness in Walkerton offers recreational and competitive kickboxing and boxing classes for children and adults, as well as yoga classes. Your first class is always free to try. Bruce County Combat and Fitness offers single monthly memberships for as low as $45 and $67 for a family. Their drop-in fees are only $7 for most classes and just $5 for yoga and Little Warriors. Check out their full schedule at brucecountycombat.com. Find them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. They also sell a full range of fight gear and apparel.
Here's Mark and Don Leslie from Leslie Motors in Harrison, Walkerton, and Wingham.
Oh, hello, Marky. Have you been a good little boy this year? Don, I know it's you. Why are you acting like Santa? Because I feel like Santa with all the deals going on at Leslie Motors. Yeah, you're right. It does kind of feel like we're handing out presents this month. New or used, trucks, SUVs, CUVs, or cars, there's deals everywhere. And just in time for Christmas. Ho, ho, ho. I know, I feel it too. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Tired of hard water wreaking havoc around your home? Dry skin and lifeless hair? Dull and dingy laundry? Soap scum and spotted glasses too?
Hey, Culligan! A Culligan water softener turns hard water soft every time. Soft water is the answer. Not cleaning products or detergents. Culligan saves you up to 50% on soaps and detergents while turning your laundry, bathroom, and kitchen brilliant, like me. Hey, Culligan man! Hey, what's up?
You okay to play, Sophie? How's your breathing?
Fine, Coach. My asthma's under control, and I want to score a goal.
Okay, have fun.
Good call, Coach. Children with well-controlled asthma can be just as active as other kids. Hi, I'm 11-time Ironman champion Lisa Bentley. Asthma didn't hold me back, and it shouldn't stop your child from being active either.
Great goal, Sophie.
To find out more, order the Ontario Lung Association's Asthma Active Booklet for Children. Phone 1-888-344-LUNG.
Martial Arts World Radio is brought to you by Bruce County Combat and Fitness in Walkerton. Check out the full list of classes at brucecountycombat.com.
91.3 FM Blue Water Radio broadcasts from the Hartman Communications Tower in Brockton. Hartman Communications, helping business communicate.
Hi, I'm Don the Dragon Wilson, and you're listening to Joseph Clark at Martial Arts World Radio.
For those of you listening to Martial Arts World Radio while on your phones, tablets, or laptops, be sure to check out www.bobwallworldblackbelt.com. That's bobwallworldblackbelt.com, the world's foremost martial arts online community. For almost half a century, the DePasquale name has been synonymous with excellence in the world of martial arts, beginning with the late Michael DePasquale Sr. and continuing with his son, Michael DePasquale Jr., who is our guest today. Michael is a Soki in Jiu-Jitsu and an accomplished martial artist. He is an entrepreneur in martial arts, and his name can be found on dojos and academies, online communities, books he's authored, and of course, Michael has also been quite active as a performer in martial arts and action cinema. I caught up with Michael to discuss Bruce Lee, Chuck Norris, his father, and his involvement with the early UFC.
Michael DePasquale, welcome to Martial Arts World Radio. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Michael, your family has a legacy as contributing to the history of martial arts in America. Would you tell us a little bit about your father?
Yeah, my father was an icon in this industry. He's known as the godfather of American Jiu-Jitsu. He literally, even though his main thing was he was in the CID in World War II, security, he was a counterterrorism expert and a bomb expert, ironically. Now is when they needed him. But it's interesting because post-World War II, he was one of the true icons of the martial arts in America that brought it here. And in 1964, he actually brought jiu-jitsu to the World's Fair. His at the time, his partner in Hakuryu, who was from Japan, didn't speak very well English. His name was Hara, and my dad introduced it at the Japanese pavilion at the World's Fair, and he had people that were young guys that were there: Moses Powell, George Cofield, Ronald Duncan, George Chalian, Terry and Jackie Stern. These guys were old timers. Some of them a lot of them are dead now, but at that time I was a youngster growing up. I was there with him. And he introduced it. And at the same year, he actually hosted the Korean Olympic Judo team here in New Jersey when the Olympics just got introduced to Judo just got introduced to the Olympics. So my father was an intricate part of bringing it. He was, back then it was a lot of judo more than anything else. Even Black Belt magazine, when it first started, was a judo magazine. It started primarily because the publisher was very heavily involved in judo, and as you very well know, in Japanese, judo was it. It was a main course, if you want to call it that, in the school systems, as was kendo. But the thing is, my father interesting enough, 1967, when we are going to talk, about Bruce Lee or all the people, Chuck Norris. Before there was Chuck Norris, Bruce Lee. Van Damme was a good friend of mine, and Chuck, who was a very good friend of mine, but any one of these, Seagal. My father did a movie for Paramount Pictures, and it was called Chop Chop. A lot of people don't know about it. It is up on YouTube, but it's a 10-minute short documentary which introduces martial arts, and they built my father is very interesting. Chris Schenker was a famous sportscaster at the time. For the Olympics and for a lot of other things. He just died recently, actually. He was the commentator or the narrator for that particular film, and Paramount produced it, and it was in all the movie theaters as a short documentary that it was under the Sports in Action series that they did on skiing, fishing, all kinds of different things, and they came to my father, and I was in it. I was about, at the time, 12 years old or so, but my father had gone on to, pioneer martial arts and continue at one of the first dojos, in fact, probably the first jiu-jitsu dojo on the East Coast. That was a dojo. He actually started it out of the PAL hall below the Bergenfield Police Department. But I got to know a lot of great people and got to train with a lot of pioneers at the time. And got involved in hosting Grandmasters in Action, where I had, Professor V, I had Duncan, I had Antonio Pereira. All these guys were, from the early years. They're all gone now. But my father was one of those people that Wally J, my dad, were the true jiu-jitsu people that were, in my opinion, the gentle giants in the industry.
Michael, would you please tell us about the movie that you shot about your father, in which Frank Capra Jr., the son of the great American director, starred as your father in the film?
Ironically, at Screen Gem Studios, where Brandon Lee was shot. We shot it down there with I got involved with the vice president and the president, who was, believe it or not, was a gentleman that was his father, was very, very famous, Frank Capra, who did It's a Wonderful Life. He directed with Jimmy Stewart. But it is a classic, and his son was a great guy. And his son, who played my father in the movie, actually, in fact, you go into my website, which is thecutoffmovie.com. You'll see some behind the scenes. But his son was just a super duper guy. He was helping us with the at the time, Screen Gem Studios, which was a huge studio at the time. It went bankrupt. And we had paid tribute when we went there to Brandon. We all got around where he died. The vice president knew him because he was vice president of Screen Gems, was heavily involved with all the unions, and he dealt with a lot of people down there, and knew Brandon when he was making the movie. So,
speaking of Brandon Lee and Bruce Lee, you are the publisher of Karate International magazine. You've done a lot of coverage about Brandon Lee and Bruce Lee over the years. Would you speak to your research and your coverage of Bruce Lee and Brandon Lee?
Bruce was on the cover more than anybody. In fact, I did a lot of research, and I have one issue that has posters from around the world in my magazine that I put in there, tear sheets and little postcards from France, Germany. And it was, I think, the 20th year of his death when I did that. And I did a article which Myron King did, one of the guys that worked with me, who is a phenomenal artist and a phenomenal writer. But he, then and now, it was interesting because on the cover, believe it or not, I was the first one ever to do a cover where today it's simple. Because at that time I owned a site I had the first martial art internet site in the world with America Online as my partner. And it was just one of those things, I didn't know nothing about it. Somebody came and approached me because I had lots of content from my magazine. And Bruce was on the very, very first cover, which did very well, and that was the first full-color magazine, actually, martial art magazine. And then I transferred over to America Online, having a 6,000 page internet site with America Online. But make a long story short there, I did the special issue. I think it was 25th year of this. I'm almost sure. I forget, honestly, but I did a picture of Bruce on the front, and the picture, if you look at some of the pictures they make now where they take 1,500, 2,000 pictures and make a picture of somebody on the, well, I did that. I was the first one ever to do that. In fact, I was the first one pretty much to do it, period. I mean, there's very few magazines, I think Popular Science or something, were doing that. But I had a guy, Myron, who was working with me, who was able to do that on the computer. And we did a nice article about Bruce Lee then and now, what he would be like now, what would be his legacy, what would he have done throughout the years, what would he have. In fact, one of my issues with Bruce on the cover, I have Bruce holding a picture of his son and saying, basically saying, okay, what happened here? So it was kind of innovative. We always tried to, Bruce was definitely the guy that, you'd want to talk to. And I did an issue where I had my father, Wally J., Chuck Joe Lewis, who was very good friends with him, and all these guys. I had them do articles on one of the issues about Bruce Lee and pretty much, their experiences with Bruce. Like Joe Lewis was a great one. The interview I did with him was phenomenal. And then my father had done What If, Bruce was still alive, and, because Wally J. did an article on Bruce and his relationship with him and how he got into some of the grappling with Wally. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, when it comes down to Bruce being the iconic figure that he was and is, I mean, he was very responsible for, a lot of what went on in America when it came down to the Wing Chun and then Jeet Kune Do, the concepts that he held and the intellect that he had because of his background, because of what he felt about being pushed around as an Asian at the time he was coming up the ropes and not getting Green Hornet. And I've done, a lot of research on this because I dealt, with Bob Wall, who was very close to Bruce, and talked to a lot of these guys. But, once again, I mean, he's a guy that innovated, and he changed the world, literally, and it changed the action film.
Michael, Dana White of the UFC is quoted as saying in a documentary about Bruce Lee that Bruce Lee was the godfather of modern MMA. Do you agree with that?
No. I mean, there were post-World War II guys like Triaz and a lot of guys out there that, Don Nagel and lots of guys that Pineda, my father, those guys really set in stone in America, martial arts. But, what the bottom line is, I mean, if you look at the big picture, he influenced everybody. And there's not a person, that is at this point in the martial art community at all. None of them. I mean, that, can't say thank you to someone like Bruce. Do they need to be able to be thankful to the people that obviously pioneered it here in America? Yeah.
Michael, you were a part of martial arts history, and so far as you participated in the early days of the UFC, would you share some stories about that?
I was one of the first judges of the UFC. I actually was, I'm still judging for New Jersey State Athletic Commission, but I was the first judge for the UFC on the East Coast out of New Jersey. But for the most part, and I was a commentator for many, many years. I was there judging the UFCs. You're going to laugh. I was judging the UFCs. I was judging the UFCs back in commentating back in 96 when it first started. They had called upon me, and I said, yeah, I'd love to get involved. I was involved with a guy named Marwitz who owned it. And I always thought, and that's why I stuck with it, because I always thought there was potential in where it was going. I mean, when you look at people that did get involved, without mentioning names, that were kickboxers at the time and fighters, they didn't like it. And the reason why, because we were getting a tremendous amount of tremendous amount of viewership, and people were loving it. And same thing, you know, people don't have any clue, but I was in the thick of it and still am heavily involved with it. With people like Nick Limbo, who is heavily involved. And you want to laugh? I'll tell you a quick story, which people get a kick out of it. I was in Buffalo, New York. I'm in my room, getting ready. Shamrocks, all of it was there. Severin, Coleman, who I became friends with. I was at his first fight, Jesuit, and I got a phone call. I went to my room, and I get a phone call, and they said, Michael, we just got banned from New York. So I was there when they banned it out of New York. And I get into a plane. We all got into a plane. Interesting stories that people would love to hear. There was Shamrocks, the Severin, Don Fry, you name it, Gracie. Everybody was in this plane going down to Georgia, Augusta, Georgia, somewhere near Augusta, Georgia, in this place that they found. And we flew there at like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. But we had to take a bus another hour and a half because plane wouldn't fit on any airstrip that was near where they were going to do this thing. Of course, I didn't get any sleep because they said, Michael, I was commentating as well, as a side commentator. So I had to go there and set up. And we had no clothes. They put the octagon underneath the plane, and then left our clothes behind. So we had to wait for the next plane to get their clothes. So for the next day, it was in the evening if they had it on a Friday. This was a Thursday. So it was kind of interesting. We ended up putting it together, but it was the day that they did the UFC. And ironically, I did the mixed martial art show on Sirius Satellite, and I forget his name, but the guy that actually was the person that was interviewing me at that show was the New York State Athletic Commissioner who banned it, and now he's an advocate, and he ended up having his own TV show, mixed martial art TV show on Sirius Satellite, and became a huge fan of the UFC.
And of course, the UFC prevailed despite several challenges at the beginning. So you must have some interesting experiences around those challenges.
I was the first one ever to publish an article on the UFC. And I had Shamrock on the cover, Kenny. You know, another interesting story that you could use whatever you want to use, but I remember meeting Kenny for the first time. He was fighting, believe it or not, in Bart Vales. I was invited as a guest to Bart Vales shoot fighting tournament, which, you know, they would go back and forth. The Japanese would win, the Japanese gentleman would win, and then Bart would win over here. It was at the Hawaiian Center in Florida. And I went there, and Joe Hess was Joe Lewis was a judge. It's a real quick story. And then Shamrock was on second billing fighting somebody at the time. He was a wrestler, shoot fighter. So what happened was Joe was in the ring, and you know, they had these huge, like 4.5, 5 foot trophies, and Bart won, and the guy stuck the trophy inside the ring, and Joe grabbed it like it was the old days, solid. It was plastic, so it snapped in half. So people were like looking like it, and Bob was looking at him like, whoa. But then we had to get back to the UFC thing. I mean, for the most part, what I feel about it is it's changed the face of martial arts, period. And if anybody doesn't like to hear that, I mean, and most people know that now, it has its ups and its downs. Since, and I commend Dana White for doing what he did. He was a smart man. A lot of people, don't understand how that he was working for the Fertittas, and the Fertittas bought it because Dana was working for them at the hotel. I do believe he was a fitness coach, and talked them into buying it, which was a great idea. And what he did is he approached, just like he did now with New York. Finally, New York said, hey, we're losing out on this money that this great organization is making because we're stubborn and we don't want to let it in the door, and it's going to make money for the state. So the thing was, before, it wasn't making money for the states because, you know what, they were doing it on their own, and they didn't have any, when you do a movie, and I'm in the movie business too, when you do a movie, you've got to deal with the film commissions right? If you're going to do a sad movie, you have to do with film commissions. Same thing as if you're going to do a boxing show, you got to deal with the commissions. Well, UFC didn't want to do that earlier on, and they didn't want to. That means giving money. So and it was stubbornness. And look what happened, because they sold it for what, $2.5 million, $3 million, I think it was, and Dana picked it up with the 15 and look what it went.
Michael, I asked Frank Shamrock the same question that I'm about to ask you, so I'm interested in your opinion, and based on your research of Bruce Lee, what do you think Bruce Lee's opinion would be of the UFC today?
I think he would love it. I think he would love to see where this thing went. You look at, Enter the Dragon, where he has that little grappling scene, that one grappling scene, and he would love to grapple. Gene Bell's article says that. I mean, he loved that stuff. I mean, this guy, he was one tough cookie for his side.
Michael, would you tell us the story about the falling out between Bruce Lee and world karate champion Joe Louis?
Joe Louis was like my big brother. He worked for my magazine. We went everywhere together. In fact, his 10th degree black belt, he didn't want it from anybody but my father. So my father was the one that gave him, and just recognized him for that rank, because he didn't have any instructors, at that point that he got that in 1995 or 6. And I asked my father, and my father said I'd be honored. So, but to have the conversations about Bruce with him was just amazing, because, he told me a story about, he met Bruce at Black Belt Magazine offices. And the guy wants to talk to him, wants to have a meeting with him, and he's looking at this guy, and he said to me, he goes, I was a champ, and I was, big, and he was small, and I didn't even pay attention to him. I didn't want to pay attention to him. And then a week and a half later, 2 weeks later, Mike Stone said, did you ever see this guy, Bruce Lee? I mean, this unbelievable strength that this guy has. He could pick up a 50 or 100-pound dumbbell, whatever it was, and pick it up straight out with his arm, and he's only about 135 pounds. And he says, no, I met him, but I didn't pay attention. He goes, you should, and you should be what Bruce wanted to do was train Joe, because Joe was the name back then. Joe Louis was the guy that was it. He was the golden boy. He was the guy that wasn't, a killer in the ring, and point fighting, he was a champion. So, he wanted to get some recognition through Joe and be able to train Joe. And again, a lot of people know it, but a lot of people don't know it, that was the case. But I know it firsthand, because I sat with Joe many times and talked about his relationship and how he had a falling out, and then later on, when he did pass, they blew the league. I mean, it was one of those things that just happens to all human beings when they have close ties with people. And he told me the reason why he had a falling out, because what happened was he won the world championship, or the national, I forget which one it was, and Bruce was there. And Bruce was training him at the time. And again, another interesting story. And Joe said that when he did the interview, he was talking about his Japanese background, where he trained in Ishin style and some other ones in Okinawa when he was in the Marines. And he said, the interviewer did not give me a chance to talk about Bruce. I was just about ready to say, well, my instructor and my trainer right now, who I've been working with, is Bruce, and he cut it off. And Bruce got livid, because he was just talking about his history of where he started. And he was going to go into the fact that now I'm training with a gentleman, his name is Bruce Lee, and I'm vindicating him in a certain sense at this point. And he's a great, the guy's done miracles with me in strength training, and speed, and so on. But he never got a chance to say that, because the guy who was interviewing did not give him a chance to talk any further. And he said, Bruce thought that it was over. I wasn't thinking about him. I didn't want to mention him. And that was it for me. Bruce didn't want to talk to me, which is logical. I mean, later on, I think they made amends, but the bottom line only, his wife understood Joe, and, but, those are the kind of things, because Joe was a champion's champion at the time. you know, him and Chuck and point fighting and all us would go back and forth, beating each other. And that's when, you know, they were kind of fighting. And they won that, you know, when Ed Parker did the, you know, his Long Beach International, and maybe, you know, that's what Bruce was obviously doing his, you know, 2-finger push-ups, and then doing the, you know, a 1-inch punch, knocking people on chairs. And of course, he got, you know, the interest of the producer of the Green Hornet, and things started to roll from there. But he has ups and downs.
Michael, is martial arts less partisan now than it was 30 or 40 or even 50 years ago as a result of the MMA movement?
Yeah, I think that what's really made it that way, honestly, is the fact that, and I hate to say this, but yeah, I'm being truthful. I think that, you know, a lot of the guys that are pretty much not martial arts want to become these great, you know, it's like no different than you know, a young guy wanting to be Justin Bieber or something, you know. I mean, they don't want to be the mixed martial art guys that they see. It got bad raps, but also there's good reason for getting some bad raps, because, you know, you can't be a mixed martial artist and be foul in the mouth, and you can't be thinking, you know, it's not the way to be. I mean, I understand it to a degree, and believe me, I've been around it since all of them, Tank Abbott and God, you know, Keith Hackney, all those guys were friends of them. I mean, all of them I knew, and when they were the ones that pioneered this. Gracie, I did seminars with, you know, Hort and Hoyce. They were very respectful of my father. They idolized my father. From my perspective, I think that anything that deals with promoting martial arts in America properly is going to be a positive thing for everybody in the future and the younger generation. I've been involved in everything. I mean, name it, from the sport karate scene. I'm in the Battle of Atlanta Hall of Fame. I'm in the Ocean State Grand National Hall of Fame, the Kentucky Blue. I've done all that with a lot of these guys. Been involved with all these guys, great people. Joe Corley, Chuck Norris, a good friend of the family. I've known him for a long time. And you know, listen, Donnie Rodriguez, who is the head of the John Paul Mitchell team, which is outstanding, and he's just done a great job with that. You know, you're always going to have breakdowns in organizations like you know, like they did in the old days and now. You have NASCA, you have NDAL. You know, there's going to be differences, and people are vying for position on television, vying for position in publicizing, you know, their events, because they know that without publicizing, without getting out there, they're not going to last very long because it's too much money.
Michael, thank you so much for being with us. This is our wrap-up question, and believe me, I could speak to you all day and it would not get boring. So many interesting stories and such great information. Michael, take us back in time to your childhood, and if you will recall for us, the first time as a child that you stepped foot into a dojo and received formal martial arts instruction. How did that happen? Where was it? When was it? And what did it feel like?
I had a great childhood in the respects that I couldn't say no. My father would say to my brothers and me at the time, you know, when I was 4 or 5, get in the car, you know, we're going to the school. And my father, at that time, we moved to New Jersey, and he had a school below. He was in law enforcement, but he had a school in the PAL hall in the basement of the Bergenfield Police Department, where I got my yellow belt. I got my yellow belt, I think, when I was about 8 years old there. But I remember when I was about 5 years old when I started. It was an interesting experience, yes. It was more judo than anything else, because judo was the thing that they taught to kids mostly back then. Karate was not taught to kids as much. And jiu-jitsu wasn't taught to kids as much, although judo comes from jiu-jitsu. So you have a little bit, you know, the elements. And of course, as you start getting older, then you're able to do the wrist breaks. When you start getting developed and physically, you're able to do jiu-jitsu, because back then, they didn't want to, you know, there was a lot of joint manipulation, so they didn't want the youngsters to do too much of that. But yeah, Ken, you know, my father was very interesting. Probably the biggest experience I had when I was growing up, and the first time I stepped on a mat was at that particular time when I trained in the PAL in Bergenfield, New Jersey, and then stepped foot on a mat in the Judo Twins dojo, which was the only dojo in New York back on the west side. And I was a youngster. As a youngster growing up, I saw the transition of martial arts from very, 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 very few dojos. There were clubs. There weren't dojos. There were mostly clubs into what it is today.
Michael, thank you very much for joining us today. And would you please leave us with some parting wisdom on having a life worth living?
The bottom line is, I always say to people, man, your past experiences make up your life on top of the experience you're having now. That's what makes your life, is your experiences. And without great experiences, like Bruce, when you're talking about Bruce, he had a great life. His experiences in life, you can see, were fantastic and changed a lot of other people to really be wanting to get on a karate deck, get into a karate school, a kung fu school. When you have people that make changes like that, like Seagal did, no matter what anybody thinks of him, with the Aikido that he did in his movies with Above the Law, he changed people's way of thinking, like, Karate Kid, what it did for the youth of America getting into martial arts. Those are the things that make a difference in life. When you can make that difference, there's nothing like it, and be part of it.
You've been listening to my interview with Michael DePasquale Jr.
This is UFC fighter Jason Sago. You are now listening to Martial Arts World Radio with Joseph Clark.
Bruce County Combat and Fitness in Walkerton offers recreational and competitive kickboxing and boxing classes for children and adults, as well as yoga classes. Your first class is always free to try. Bruce County Combat and Fitness offers single monthly memberships for as low as $45 and $67 for a family. Their drop-in fees are only $7 for most classes and just $5 for yoga and Little Warriors. Check out their full schedule at brucecountycombat.com. Find them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. They also sell a full range of fight gear and apparel.
You have a great business idea, have discussed it with family and friends, but what comes next? Planning. Great business ideas don't ensure success, but having a detailed business plan, researching your market, startup costs, and possible sources of financing will help you begin building a solid foundation for your business idea. Start the new year off right. Get professional help developing your business plan. Explore trends, financing options, and marketing ideas in workshops offered by Saugeen Economic Development Corporation. Trainer Cliff Billier will help you develop an action plan to bring your entrepreneurial dreams to reality. Workshop dates are January 10th and 31st. For more details, visit our website under training, sbdc.ca.
This is Brian Powers. Join me on Sunday mornings at 8 a.m. for the Blessed Hour. Each week, we feature the best Christian music, Bible scripture, and commentary, and have special guests from the community. That's the Blessed Hour with me, Brian Powers, and Jerry Gibbs. Sunday mornings, 8 till 10 a.m., right here on 91.3 FM Blue Water Radio.
This is Harold Green from the Red Green Show, and I'm listening to 91.3 FM Blue Water Radio. So are you. We're listening to it together.
Martial Arts World Radio is brought to you by Bruce County Combat and Fitness in Walkerton. Check out the full list of classes at brucecountycombat.com. Martial Arts World Radio is brought to you by Bruce County Combat and Fitness in Walkerton. Check out the full list of classes at brucecountycombat.com.
This is Olivier Gruner. You are listening to Martial Arts World Radio with Joseph Clark.
Bob Wall is a world karate champion with an unequaled pedigree in martial arts. He was Bruce Lee's co-star in 3 of Bruce Lee's movies, including Enter the Dragon. And he has also appeared in several Chuck Norris films. I recently had a brief chat with Bob about his observations on the evolution of martial arts and his perspectives on the UFC.
So please share with us your opinion on mixed martial arts and mixed martial arts organizations such as the UFC and Pride Fighting.
I love MMA and I love UFC. There are some policies of MMA that I'm disappointed in, i.e. their ability. I suggested after UFC number 21, I sent a letter to Dana White, which was never answered,
And I said, guys, you've made a lot of money. You're worth, I think at that point, a couple $1 billion. You come up from nothing. You invested. You lost $44 million to get there. But this was a great show. Look up UFC 121. Great show. The best one at that time. I said, how about we start a program to support the fighters who create, they are the ones who create the excitement. How about take 5% of their purse, put it into a fund. You guys, UFC, donate 5%. I believe I can get insurance companies to donate another 5% towards a retirement so that when these fighters' career is done, they have a retirement. Letter was ignored. Never going to call, no answer. I think that was a big failing. But aside from that, I admire greatly what Dana White and the Fertitta brothers did, what they've created. But then we go to the negative again. I don't admire that they're, in my opinion, a monopoly. They don't allow, they buy up anybody that even remotely comes up close to competing with them. And I don't like monopolies. I really think we should have lots of competing organizations to create the CBA teams, blah, 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 create other opportunities. I think they're very rigid about their restriction of fighters. I don't like their policies, but I love their results. As far as the fights they put on, they got amazing fighters. But when you're a monopoly, you get them all, don't you? So I love MMA. I'm not a huge fan of UFC politics or BS in that they don't understand without the fighters, they're nothing. So that's my opinion on MMA and UFC.
And would you share some advice for our listeners who are considering taking martial arts for the first time? If they were starting out today, or if you were starting out today, knowing what you know, what would you do and what advice would you give them?
Well, the important thing is to first ask yourself, why do I want to study martial arts? And if you want to lose weight, or if you want to learn to protect yourself, if you want to learn to compete in non-contact sport, I mean, you have to decide what it is you really want out of your martial arts career. But if you're serious about self-defense, then you want to look out serious self-defense people. And you know as well, because I look at your resume and I go, holy moly. So, you know, it's just really a question of your goal. In my personal opinion, you need to study jiu-jitsu or wrestle or American box or Thai box. And a combination of those four is incredible. But every single martial art has very, very good things, whether it's Taekwondo, whether it's Shotokan, Judo, whatever. They're all have outstanding aspects. But the key there is to do some research, call friends, and just check around. And even call in, if you have nothing else, and interview martial arts schools over the phone. What do you teach? What's your focus? You know, what will I learn if I'm there a month, 2 months, 6 months, a year, and so on and so forth. But if your goal is self-defense, then you want to go to a certain school. If your goal is professional fighting, you want to go to another school. So it's really a question of what you want, what your personal goal is. The important thing is to find a school with ethics, a school that's been around a while, a school that really has solid teachers, and if nothing else, just go in and interview some of the students. Hey, look, I want to find out what kind of school you got. You only give me the names and numbers of some of your students. If they're not, leave. If they are, interview and just talk to them. And it's like all of us, once we're in it a while, you know, we learn just like you've done. You know, you train in Wado-Ryu, you train in Shurijo Kempo, you added Wing Chun, Western boxing, Muay Thai, you added MMA, you did cardio, you did weights, you did grappling. So you know as well as I know, the answer is do a few different things. Don't just get stuck in doing Taekwondo for 40 years. You understand? My point is go train in 2 or 3 disciplines and then see which one appeals to you that will get you to the goal you're going to. But for me, if you wind up, you really want to be able to defend yourself, wrestle, American boxing, Thai boxing, jiu-jitsu. And the rest will take care of itself. Okay, that's my opinion.
I think it's great advice because I firmly believe that a lot of people will get into a rut with martial arts because I believe martial arts is a form of self-expression, and that you do have to find that self-expression, that martial art that best suits you so that you can be really passionate about it. And I also believe, and this is why when you were listing my resume of different disciplines that I trained in, I was looking to take what was meaningful and practical out of one and combine it with another and discard the things that weren't meaningful or practical to me. And eventually, once you become, like, I'm middle-aged now, it's almost like your own style. And I instruct my kids because it's like our family style is taking very practical movements and very practical measures from a kind of a plethora of different styles.
Well, you're right on. Believe me, that's a bullseye. That's the answer. Make it your own. And you can't do that if you don't study several different things. And comfortable, confident instructors will encourage you to go study competing martial arts. Insecure people will discourage you, fire you, kick you out, ban you, whatever. And that's all good. Because if they do, you should have been gone anyway. Go study different things and then fix the ones that fit you and your personality.
Bob, I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap up, so I have one last question for now, but it would be a privilege to have you back for another interview another time.
Ditto, mine as well.
Oh, it's just been terrific, and this time has gone by so quickly. And I also have several more pages of questions that I should have covered off tonight. This has just been fantastic, and thank you. You've done great. So my last question for the evening would be, what has your martial arts journey and just your life journey in general, what has it taught you about yourself?
Well, it's taught me that I could overcome my insecurities. It's taught me that I could at least get the saddle on my rage. Because unfortunately, 60 years of martial arts training is still there, but I've subdued it to a point. Is you with me?
I am.
But my biggest regret is that 60 years later, I'll only take so much BS. And then somebody's got to fall down and squeak. And I enjoy that. So it's like, that's still, in my mind, a weakness, a feeling. But to me, the answer, when you're married to Tracy for 18 years, and I'm married to Lillian for 46 years, we got the important lesson to get your life partner and make sure that you do what's necessary to keep your life partner happy, because then your kids will be happy, you'll be happy, and then they'll give you the time and the freedom to go do these other stupid things and continue life's quest.
And actually, I lied. I have one more question for you.
I love it when you lie.
What is your vision for your career? For your future. For the future.
The future. Yeah. I just want to continue training. I mean, I'm 75. I do the splits. I have a resting heart rate of 59. I'm always ready for idiots and disgusting disgraces like Frank Dukes, who I just offered to fight $4 million. I want to be able to be there for the ISIS people of the world, for the evils. And so my career is to continue to stay in great shape and achieve my fantasy of being 100 years old, coming out of the theater by myself with money stuck out of all pockets, and have 4 or 5 ISIS-type scummy thugs try to take my money.
Okay, live mic.
And then hopefully my wife will forgive me for doing what I do with them. But it'll be play for me. It won't be fun for them. That's my fantasy and my goal.
Bob, thanks for sharing this evening. It has been most interesting, and congrats on your career. You're a terrific guest, terrific guy, and I wish you continued success.
Well, thank you for the honor of you being the interviewer. You've been fantastic. Joseph David Clark. I really appreciate it. And tell Tracy, thanks for loaning you to me. And Tamara and Ashlyn and Ethan and Connor Gabriel, thanks you guys for loaning your dad.
You've been listening to an interview with martial arts legend Bob Wall.
This is world champion Steve Nasty Anderson. You're listening to Martial Arts World Radio with Joseph Clark.
Be sure to check us out at www.mawradio.com and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube by following Martial Arts World Radio. Thank you for joining us. I'm Joseph Clark, wishing you safe travels.
Okay, thank you very much, YouTube followers.